Hot streak. The volleyball team continues to dominate on the court. Black and blue. The Steelers' preseason was great for Yinzers, but the regular season has been anything but ideal. And are musicians athletes? Our reporters will debate on if they think marching band qualifies as a sport. It's time to come on down to the Pioneer Sideline. Good evening and welcome back to the Pioneer Sideline. I'm Kiara Fry, filling in for Allison Schubert. Tonight we discuss the latest in Point Park sports headlines as well as everything you need to know in regional and national sports news. But first, we begin with the volleyball team, who has continued their win streak this past week. To talk details, we bring in Trevor Ulichny to make his Pioneer Sideline debut. Trevor, welcome.
Thank you, Kiara.
So could you break down this week's match for us?
Okay, last Tuesday, the Point Park Pioneers girls volleyball team defeated Washington Jefferson by a final score of 3-1. They lost the first set, they dropped to 23-25, but made a terrific comeback by making the final scores of 25-16, 25-13, and 25-21.
And how do you think Coach Bielich's coaching style, this only being her second season as the head coach, has impacted this team and kind of brought them together?
The Point Park girls volleyball team has definitely come together with her coaching style. They're definitely buying into what they're selling, as you can tell by the record, 8-1. Pretty good start for the girls team.
It sure is. And who on the team continues to stand out to you, and who do you think, as the season progresses, needs to step up more and start contributing to those wins?
Starter Taylor Small has been absolutely unbelievable for the start of this season. She has 17 kills and a kill percentage of .294. She's just dominating on the court, and she's a menace to any person that has to face her.
So on the team right now, there are only a handful of players that are designated to play junior varsity. So as a result of that, we see varsity players and returners also playing in these JV games. How do you think that's been impacting the team in their varsity performance?
Well, the lack of JV players is certainly a problem for sure, for several reasons. One, that the JV players won't get their experience on their own, having trouble coming in from the starting players, and the starting players also having to play JV and varsity. That risks more injury, that's more fatigue, which could hurt them as the season progresses.
Yeah, definitely. And tonight the women's volleyball team actually has a game against Salem International. Thanks, Trevor. When we return, we will touch on both men's and women's soccer and how things have been faring on the field. We'll be right back.
Go. Go to our new website, uview.pointpark.edu. Go, 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 go.
Join UView and find your herd.
Be like, join EOP. And 3, 2, join EOP.
I was just saying, grab them now, or else I can stuff.
Yeah.
Join on point with politics. 3, 2, 1.
Join Pioneer Sideline.
Loneliest number that you'll ever do.
Welcome back. The women's soccer team finally managed their first win of the season this past week. To discuss, we bring in Taylor Spirito. Welcome, Taylor.
Thanks, Kiera.
So could you kind of just give us a recap of the week's past game?
So after that horrific loss to Siena Heights, 7-2, they did come back and win their first game of the season. That was against Washington Adventist. They won 3-1, and they actually scored their they scored all of their goals in the second half. They did go into the second half losing 1-0, but they rallied to have 3 unanswered goals, and they got their first win of the season out of the way.
Yeah, it's definitely great that they finally got that first win. And in this game, who do you think really stood out and was able to help them get that first win?
I'd be remiss not to mention Tia Haru. She scored the tie-breaking goal and the insurance goal, the last one being with less than 3 minutes left on the clock, just to get that little extra insurance for the Pioneers. She's really stepped up her game as a student athlete, not just on the soccer team, but for Point Park in general. You can really see her athleticism coming out in all of the sports that she participates here. And she's just been doing absolutely incredible. And to think that she's an underclassman, like, that's crazy.
Yeah, it definitely is. And she's definitely making an impact on Point Park sports. So do you think that finally getting this first win will help their mental game, or do you think it's still going to be kind of dwelling on these past few games that haven't gone in their favor?
So last year, they did start their season 0-4, just like they have this year. But the difference was, at least so far, they went out and got a winning season last year. I believe they were 11-4 off the top of my head. So if they can do what they did last year, kind of pull themselves out of that mental fatigue that having an 0-4 start brings, I think that they could duplicate, however you want to put it, what they did last year and have a great rest of the season.
So you already kind of touched on this. This is a very similar start to what they had last season. Do you think that this group of people could do better or worse at coming out of this mental state, and how do you think their season's going to go overall?
I think this group can pull it off. They have some great returners, Ashton Webb as one of them, our starting goaltender. She's made a ton of great saves thus far. Has let a few slip past her, but I think once she gets back into the swing of things, she's really going to amaze everyone. Chloe Bowser, defensive player, so good at defense. She won a few RSC Player of the Weeks last year. So she's going to do absolutely phenomenal. And I think if those key players, Tia Haru included in that, can step up and be the leadership that this team needs, I think that they can pull off what they did last year.
I completely agree. Thank you, Taylor. Moving over to the men's side of things, the hot streak continued this week as the men tallied another close win after a close match with Washington Adventist. To tell us more, we bring in Colton DeVias. Welcome, Colton.
Thank you, Kara. It's great to be back.
So could you tell us what the game from this past week was like for the men's soccer team?
Absolutely, Kara. So the Pioneers traveled to Washington, D.C. to take on Washington Adventist, and they were down 1-0 in the first half, but they were able to come back to eventually tie the game and potentially get the game winner in the second half for a 2-1 victory, as the Pioneers now extend their record to 4-1 overall so far.
So far this season, are you seeing more from the veteran players that are coming back or the newbies, and what kind of impact do you think each of these groups could have on this team?
Well, I think it can go either way, because the two players that I guess have kind of shocked me in a way are Victor Lorente and Riesel Refed. Now, they are both seniors, but they didn't play last year, both of them. So these are two guys that have really impressed me. I believe that they both. There is actually a 5-way tie for most goals scored in this team, and Lorente and Refed are two of those players. So those are two players that have really impressed me.
This team does have a lot of talent. So what has been your biggest takeaway from watching the team thus far in the season?
Possession of the ball. I was able to call the game for the Point Park Sports Network on Tuesday at home against Penn State Beaver, which resulted in an 11-0 win for the Pioneers. Now, with this game, I think that one of the reasons that they won was because they controlled the possession of the ball. They were able to keep it in Penn State's Beaver end for basically most of the game. I mean, it just seems like that the goalkeepers for the Pioneers really necessarily didn't have to do much work. But they kept it in their end, which opened more scoring opportunities for the Pioneers, which did result in that 11-0 victory.
So last week we got Dara's predictions for the team this season. What are some of your predictions for the team?
Well, I think as it goes for the rest of the season, I mean, it's not really going to be much easy knowing that conference play is going to be starting soon for the Pioneers. But I do believe that this team can make it back to the playoffs, and hopefully they can get deeper into the playoffs and try to avenge their first round exit from last year.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that they are a playoff team this year, but I guess we'll see how far they go. Thank you, Colton.